Hello and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Switchboard, a one-stop resource hub for newcomer service providers. Today's session is entitled ECBO Partnership with State Refugee Offices. When we say ECBO, we're referring to ethnic community-based organizations. My name is Rob Callus and I will be your facilitator for today. I will have some portions where I'm sharing some of our content, but I'm your representative from Switchboard who will be guiding us through today's 75-minute webinar. My name's Rob, like I said. I'm a Switchboard Training Officer focused on community integration. I have experience working in instructional design, global health, and of course, refugee resettlement. Before joining Switchboard, I managed programs at a local resettlement agency in Durham, North Carolina, where I supported refugee and immigrant families through the Refugee School Impact and Refugee Youth Mentoring Grants. I speak Swahili and Spanish. I'm ESL certified for youth and adults. I'm currently pursuing a master's in social work at UNC Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels. I'd like to introduce you to our real experts today and our speakers for today's webinar. So welcome first to Nawid Mousa. Nawid manages the Ethnic Community Self-Help Program, which established an Afghan Cultural Center in Idaho's Treasure Valley in 2023 and works within the Idaho State Refugee Office Replacement Designee. As a refugee from Afghanistan, he moved to Boise in 2008 and later earned a bachelor's in civil engineering from Boise State University. Nawid previously worked as a database administrator for the Idaho Office for Refugees and speaks 5 languages. He actively volunteers with community programs and supports newly arrived refugees in his everyday life. Next, we have Sedrick Murhula, who has over 15 years of experience in international development, working with humanitarian organizations, refugee-led organizations, and ethnic community-based organizations, ECBOs. He specializes in needs assessments, professional development, community engagement, advocacy, and strategic planning. Sedrick currently supports the Kentucky Office for Refugees by providing technical assistance to ECBOs, helping them access resources and succeed. And last but not least, we have Nao Kabashima, the founder and executive director of the Karen Organization of San Diego, or KOSD. Originally from Japan, Nao earned a master's in political science from California State University in Chico. Nao co-founded KOSD in 2009 to support Burmese refugees in San Diego. She has also served as secretary and chair of the San Diego Refugee Forum and was named one of San Diego's Women of Distinction in 2024. Nao and the Karen organization also are an important partner with us at Switchboard, and we're really grateful for their support in all things related to ECBO leadership and success in the field. Just a couple reminders before we proceed. If you have any questions for anyone in this webinar, please use the Q&A function to do so. We do not have the chat open for communication between panelists and participants, but if you have questions for any of our speakers today, please submit them through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. Let's proceed. Just want to go over briefly our learning objectives and the flow of today's session. So hopefully by the end of the 75-minute session, you'll be able to first explain how state refugee offices, or SROs, commonly partner with ECBO. So we're really going to start looking at what that partnership looks like in practice. Next, we'll be able to identify challenges and opportunities that ECBOs may face by examining 3 successful partnership models. And so we'll go through each of those models one by one and describe sort of the benefits and the challenges that they experience. And last but not least, we hope that you'll be able to apply best practices shared by ECBO leaders, like those of our speakers, for applying All right, let's get to our next portion. Great. So we're going to start, as we do with many Switchboard webinars, from trying to hear from you all as our participants. We are so glad you're here. So if we can start with just a Slido quiz. Slido is a live polling platform. And so if you scan the QR code at the top left, you'll be able to answer a series of questions that we show on the screen as we go. So this first question, we have, which best describes your role or organization? One of the reasons we like to get this information is because it helps us know how to tailor our content within this session, just to make sure that we're providing examples of things that are most relevant for you. All right, love to see so many folks at state refugee offices and replacement designees. Lots of folks at resettlement agencies that aren't ECBOs, probably who partner with ECBOs in a variety of ways. Really glad that you all are here too. And of course, nice to see that we've got some ECBO leaders and caseworkers. I'm combining some of those numbers for them just to show we do have like quite a few of you who are coming from ECBOs. We're really glad, especially that you're here. All right, and folks, outside of our more traditional resettlement agency spaces, really grateful for you guys. I think what's really important about a topic like this is that partnership has to go in not just one direction, it has to go in sort of like a communal sort of web and network sort of way. Awesome. Looks good. Really grateful that y'all are here. It looks like we've got a really good and diverse audience that we're working with here. All right, and good start with your Slido responses. We got a couple more before we get into some of the content. So let's start with, if you work at an ECBO or another resettlement agency, so this is not a question for folks who work at SROs right now, we'll have some for you. How closely are you connected with your SRO or state refugee coordinator? And we can say 1 is, I don't interact with my state refugee office or coordinator at all, and 5 being, I frequently interact with my state refugee office or my state refugee coordinator. All right. And I think what's really good to know here is that at our vantage point from Switchboard, we work with folks from all over the US, and we do see this variety of experience here, right? It always depends on particular conditions and visibility and a number of different factors about how you may be involved with your state refugee office as a resettlement agency or an ECBO. And hopefully by today, those of you guys who are down in the 1 or the 2 territory will find strategies that can help you get up to the 3s and the 4s and the 5s. All right, got some good responses so far. All right, yeah, like I said, we're sitting above 2.5, which is our sort of our midpoint here, but hopefully by the end of the session, we'll get you even higher up there. All right, and we've got one more Slido. Actually, not quite one more Slido. There might be one more secret one after this. Next one is, what might be some benefits of stronger relationships between ECBOs and state refugee offices? So anyone can answer this one, of course. What do you think might be some of the benefits of a stronger relationship between ECBOs doing the work on the ground with newcomer populations and state refugee offices? Love to see some of these responses. Stronger networking and advocacy, sharing experience, access to funding and resources, reduced duplication of efforts. I think that's huge. So many folks are doing this work and maybe just don't know that they're all doing it. So can we coordinate those services better? Building a strong community, better understanding of the needs on the ground, better access to partnerships, funding, amplifying refugee voices, definitely really appreciate that, making sure that at all levels of this work, authentic lived experience is represented and factored in as essential to this work. Better connections, continuity of care, easy referrals, these are really great answers. Unified advocacy, increased impact. Ultimately, yeah, I think that's one of the things that we need to center here, is that these connections aren't just things that we do just because they seem good or feel good. It's that they can lead to actual positive experiences and outcomes for newcomers who are coming to the communities in which we serve. Really like this piece about transparency, right? Creating more avenues for communication about what we're seeing on the day-to-day in order to help us bridge some of those gaps to delivery. Breaking silos also, yeah, just there's so many good people doing this work. It's important to bring everyone in community in different ways. Very good. All right, these are some really good responses. Sounds like you guys are coming with the right ideas and with the right goals out of today's session. Our goal today is to take you, like I said, from areas where you may not feel like you have a strong connection to how we can get to those stronger connections and lead to those benefits, right? So in our first section, I'll be starting off this content by demystifying the role of the State Refugee Coordinator and the State Refugee Office and how those offices may connect with ECBO. So starting very SRO focused. Just note that we'll be using some acronyms throughout here for just convenience sake, but we'll try and vary it up. When we say SRC, that is State Refugee Coordinator. SRO is State Refugee Office. One that's not on the screen that I'd also like to highlight is RD, and that's Replacement Designee. A replacement designee represents a nonprofit or an organization that has stepped up to functionally take the role of the State Refugee Office where there is no resettlement program, at least not run by the state. And so replacement designees have the same functions as state refugee offices, but organizationally in nature are different. So just something to keep in mind for those of y'all at home, just so you know what we're talking about when we say SRO, SRC, and RD. And of course, ECBO have already discussed ethnic community-based organization. Let's dig into some of this content. So before we do, one more Slido. I want to ask, in addition to the benefits which we asked about, what are the ways that your ECBO or your state refugee office partner with the other parties? So think about what are the ways that you guys do engage in partnership. And for this question, it's multiple choice. You can select all that apply. So maybe you partner in a couple different ways. We want to get a sense of the ways in which you guys work together. All right, got some people responding so far. Let's see how these are populated. All right. So at least seeing some people who do have these partnerships being present at outreach events, that's really good. That's an excellent, useful strategy. Participation in quarterly consultations as well. That's particularly relevant for the folks who are trying to work on, removing the duplication of services just to make sure we're better coordinating our efforts. Potential client referrals. I really appreciate seeing that, especially being able to see that again at all levels that folks are having such direct practice experience here. All right, so we've got some folks here and we've had 31 people in the room respond. So that means those who do have that partnership, these are the ways in which they show up. That's really great. All right, so let's dig into how the SRO and the SRC works overall. So some of this may be a little bit basic just to start out with, but feels like an important foundation just to make sure that we're talking about, all right, now that we know how SROs work, we can talk about how we can partner, right? So State Refugee Office administer the refugee resettlement program at the state level. And so they receive funding based on the numbers of refugees who are coming to their states, and they have different kinds of funds and discretionary funds. And they also sort of work more specifically with state and local government in order to facilitate and support the refugee resettlement program in their state. They're responsible for overseeing the design, implementation, and coordination of newcomer serving programs. So that's related to reception and placement and related to ORR funded programs as well. And they receive funds from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. On the next slide, we'll sort of talk about what the flow of funding looks like and how this works in the first place. So first, we start out with our legislators in Congress who are suggesting different recommendations and bills to pass regarding the budget and the amount of money that goes towards the refugee resettlement program. That money flows first to the Office of Refugee Resettlement to deliver programs related to promoting newcomer integration. From ORR, that funding can flow in a couple different ways, but let's start with a really simple way where states receive funds from the Office of Refugee Resettlement that we call formula funds. And these are based on the numbers of newcomers that each state is receiving, the populations they're receiving, and sort of what sites and what cities and towns in that state are receiving newcomers. So there's very intense formulation around that. And from there, funds from the State Refugee Coordinator and the State Refugee Office are then passed along or passed through into local agencies, ECBOs, etc. I'd like to note also that once that funding has been received by local agencies and ECBOs, they can also sort of further pass that funding through in a variety of different models. one common way is through subaward partnerships. And so folks who are applying for the grants directly from the state refugee coordinator or state refugee office can mention who they are going to be contracting with as subawardees who are going to be involved in the work, where one agency may be sort of the primary funder and subawardees will be folks who are invested in supporting the work as well. While we will be focusing a lot on the connections between state refugee coordinators and offices with local agencies and ECBOs, I do also want to emphasize that this is not the only way that funding flows. There are a number of other ways, and of course, there are funds that agencies and ECBOs can apply for directly from the Office of Refugee Resettlement as well. But just wanted to give you a sort of a bird's eye, simple view of how funding flows here. Just want to highlight a couple of the common grants managed by states that come from ORR originally. And this list is not exhaustive, and it's honestly a little bit more complicated than saying it goes straight to there. But one thing I want to highlight first is the Refugee Cash or Refugee Medical Assistance Programs, two different programs, RCA and RMA. These are refugee support services that come in and take the place of when public benefits may not be accessible for refugees who are newly arrived, right? And within refugee support services, we have this RSS program that promotes employment services, particularly around rapid employment and immediate barriers to integration. So it can have to do with access to transportation, language assistance, so on and so forth. Next two that I want to highlight are the Refugee School Impact Program and the Refugee Youth Mentoring Programs. These are what we call set-aside programs, and they come through the Refugee Assistance Program, that funding that goes from ORR to state refugee offices and then is passed through there into local agencies. And these are focused on youth. So Refugee School Impact having to do with supporting refugee youth in schools, and youth mentoring having to do with the 15 to 24-year-old age range for youth who are sort of self-actualizing, developing, maybe considering if they want to go to college, if they want to go into the workforce, and supporting those folks with community mentors who can support them in making those decisions. Other two programs I want to talk about are the Services to Older Refugees and Refugee Health Promotion. So Services to Older Refugees is another one of those RSS set-asides, and similarly to youth mentoring, it is targeted to a specific age range. Services to Older Refugees is for older adults who are coming to the United States as newcomers with ORR eligible statuses and providing more tailored services to older adult populations. And the Refugee Health Promotion Grant, like several other grants, is a little bit interesting in that it can pass through states, but it can also be directly appropriated from the Office of Refugee Resettlement as well. So these are just to highlight some of the programs that you may be able to access or inquire about from your state refugee office. If you do work for a local agency or an ECBO, just wanted to make sure that some of those programs, those common programs, are on your radar. Next question, one of the big questions about funding around this and some of these grants is how much do states award? And, you know, the challenging and most straightforward, ironically enough, answer is it depends on the state. It depends on a lot of different factors, right? So as I mentioned first, that first piece is that ORR awards formula funds based on population. So each state gets a different amount of funding based on the arrivals that they're seeing, based on the newcomers that are in their state, and based on the services and cities and agencies that are available. There aren't requirements on how much is subawarded or subgranted or the method used, right? So when you are applying to the state refugee office for funds for any of those preceding grant programs, and you do want to subaward or contract out with folks, there aren't necessarily like harsh requirements or subscriptions, pardon me, like that. But and additionally, the method used is varied. So sometimes these will be awarded as discretionary funds. Sometimes there might be a request for proposals, RFP. States can do that at their discretion. You just need to reach out to your state to figure out their most common pathways for awarding funds. And then that last piece, the application process varies from state to state. So it does depend. So best thing to do is just to know going into a reach out or a connection with the state, what some of the models are so that you can ask more specifically about what is offered and how you might be able to best connect and plug in. Right. I wanted to share just a couple, now that we've talked about the basics of how state refugee offices work, I want to share about a couple of the sort of basic successes and challenges around working with state refugee offices that ECBO leaders from Switchboard's community of practice for ECBO leaders have shared. So this is a group that Nao Kabashima, our speaker here, coordinates regularly, and anyone who here is an ECBO leader, we definitely want to encourage you participate in this. But we had a conversation with them last year about this sort of thing, and these were some of the things they shared. So on the successes or the ways the promising practices, so to speak, some ECBO leaders shared that their SROs offer grant writing or grant making workshops for ECBOs. It can be really challenging administratively, especially for ECBOs who are working really, really hard and may not have necessarily the bandwidth, given their intense work directly on the ground with newcomer populations. So states can often offer opportunities for folks to say, hey, these are the administrative functions and these are the things that you'll need to do in order to work successfully to apply for a grant or something like that. Next one they shared about is being able to access information on grants online. So it's a matter of knowing where to look for things. Often you can look, of course, at the Office of Refugee Resettlement has their Dear Colleague letters, but state refugee offices will have their own websites as well, where they will advertise where their open grant opportunities are, and you can check out their policy letters up to date there. It'll just be important to know where in your state's sort of state government the state refugee office or replacement designee is situated. And next, some states practice what we call a cash advance pilot, which is to say that often for grants, you receive the funding after you've shown and reported the impact that you've had, and you get sort of reimbursed. However, the cash advance pilot sort of flips that, where for folks who are in more resource limited or strapped environments, the awards can come preceding the impact, and then you report on that to affirm that you accomplished the work that you set out to do with that cash advance. Some of the challenges, on the other hand, however, that we want to share about is that it's often hard to know where to start in connecting with the state refugee office. Like I said in that second strength, it's a matter often of knowing where to look and where to go, and that can be really challenging, again, for folks who are feeling a little bit stretched in terms of their capacity given their direct service experience that they're providing. Another challenge is that while info is available on the ORR website and on state government websites, it's often hard to find or difficult to understand. And that's really challenging. Understanding often some of that jargon language can be really, really difficult. So last but not least, some folks shared about the lack of grants that there's a lack of grants that benefit older community members and more like other specific populations as well. So some ECBO leaders shared about basically the challenges that folks face with the specific needs that they're facing in their communities. So while the grant opportunities are great and are quite varied in a lot of ways, some ECBOs have portfolios and projects that are more broad or more specific that sometimes they don't always fit well into state refugee office grants. So not necessarily something bad, but something that can be challenging with figuring out how to plug in with the state refugee office. Okay. All right, so at this point, I am going to turn it over to Nao, our real expert on the call. So welcome, Nao. We're so excited to hear from you about some of our partnership models that we recommend for ECBOs and state refugee offices. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. And as one of the ECBO leaders, that information that we just heard from Rob, I didn't know a lot of things because it was not very, we don't have any training around that. There's no textbook around that. And each state has a very different system. And we just learn by doing this work. But that's why I'm really appreciative for this webinar and this type of opportunity for ECBO leaders. And today here, I want to share about 3 partnership model between ECBOs and state refugee offices. I know there are many different models. There are many different ways that ECBOs and state refugee offices can partner with. But today we really wanted to share great case studies that we have great speakers from different states, and so that we can share this potential model for your states and organizations. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are some, we're going to share some overview of the three partnership models. And then the first one is the ECBO office, so coordinator within SRO, State Refugee Office. This case, ECBO office and then also the State Refugee Office is under the same organizations. And then we share one case study today from Idaho. And for this type of model, some opportunities are like related to resource access, data access, and challenges related to long-term feasibility. And next one, the next model is the consulting for ECBO engagement and mobilizations. And we are sharing one case study today from Kentucky State. And the opportunities related to awareness and voices of refugee amplified and challenges related to communication. And next one, the third model is the partnership between State Refugee Office and ECBO coalitions. And today we are sharing case study from state of California and opportunities related to collaboration and challenges related to service area gaps for this type of model. Let's go to the case studies. And this part I'm really excited to share. So we are sharing the three case studies, and then later we have a panel discussion with amazing leader from these three states, including myself. And then the first one is the African Culture Center of Idaho and Idaho Office for Refugees. And both of them are under the same nonprofit organization, JANICE, which are the replacement designee for the state of Idaho. And for this partnership model, they're working together as programs under JANICE, are larger established nonprofit organizations. And there are some great opportunities and then also some challenges in this model. And we're going to share that in the next slide. So for this type of model, they definitely have amazing opportunity because the ECBO can work very closely with the State Refugee Office under the same organizations. So some opportunities around resources and overhead provided. So, there's a lot of capacity building needs for the ECBOs and the newly resettled communities. When we're thinking about like starting new ECBO, we have to learn a lot of things, and then about administration, operating the organizations, applying for the fundings or accounting. Those are a lot of things that we definitely feel headache around. But for this type of model, because of the amazing support from the larger organizations, those type of services and support are provided, and assistance with grants also provided to some extent. And then also because the ECBO can have a very close work relationship with State Refugee Office, it may be more trust from the community for the work that they do. Sorry, I totally forgot to share the mission of the African Culture Center of Idaho. I thought it's important to share. So the African Culture Center of Idaho mission statement says mission is to be the leading voice in promoting African culture, traditions, and customs, and to foster and nurture a positive relationship with the wider community. That's the mission of this African Culture Center of Idaho, which is the ECBO serving African community in Idaho. And then, we are now sharing the partnership with the State Refugee Office. Sorry, I skipped that part. And then the next one, I'm going to share the challenges in this model. Definitely one challenge around the unsure of program sustainability, because it's all around the grants that are applied together. And of course, all of our work, we always thinking about how to sustain this work. But in this model, maybe a little more unsureness around that, and then limits on grant spending because of the necessary policy compliance, and limits on grant application because of indirect applications. And then we have amazing speaker, Nawid, gonna join our panel later. And then let's go to the next slide. And then we're gonna share the case study number 2 from Marafiki Center, and then Kentucky Office for Refugees. And in this partnership model, it is consulting for ECBO engagement and mobilizations. And in this case, the Kentucky Office for Refugee, that is also the replacement designee in Kentucky State, they work directly with the Marafiki Center to identify and then understand the state's ECBO landscape by mapping and identifying ECBOs. And then the KOR invites those ECBO to the conference or offering that tailored training to these ECBOs. And for this work, I want to share the Marafiki Center's mission statement too. The mission of Marafiki Center is to create opportunities for cross-cultural connection and build a bridge of mutual understanding through education, events, and advocating for improved representation of the African and Swahili-speaking communities in Lexington, Kentucky. And we have Sedrick from Marafiki Center is joining our panel today. But in this model, Marafiki Center is consultant for the Kentucky Office for Refugees. And they are the one mapping the many different ECBO in the Kentucky state, and then supporting the Kentucky State Refugee Office in that way. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in this model, of course, every model has some opportunity and challenges, but I see a lot of great opportunity in this model. First of all, awareness amplifications. Obviously, Marafiki Center, which is an ECBO, is a consultant for the State Refugee Office. That's the amazing way that the voices of refugees are represented in this work. And then also the Marafiki Center consulting, and then also the mapping many different ECBO in the state of Kentucky. The purpose is to empower ECBOs and recognize the work that ECBOs do in the state. And because of the consulting work, and then because of this work, the partnership between Marafiki Center and KOR, the KOR can definitely tailor the training online or in person for ECBO, depends on the needs, depends on the unique needs of the ECBOs. Maybe some ECBOs are well established and some of them are very new, but because of this mapping project, they can tailor those training and offer some training around capacity building, about funding, about many different grant opportunity at the state level. So the funding opportunity, new avenue for ECBO to access funds through the state. And challenges maybe is around the disconnect with the service providers. And then obviously we see everywhere that noticeable gap between established service providers like a resettlement agency and communities that they serve, and then the ECBOs. For this partnership, definitely the Kentucky State is doing amazing work to mapping and then truly try to understand who are doing this work in the state, but still that type of work need time and then have to continue doing that, and need for strategic prioritization of ECBOs, and ensuring work of ECBO is recognized and optimized. And then it is not just a one-day thing, it's not the one-year thing, and I have to continue doing that. It is definitely a challenge. So that was the case study number 2 from the state of Kentucky. And the third case study, we wanted to share about the third partnership model around the partnership between State Refugee Office and ECBO Coalition. For this, I'm sharing the state of California. For the state of California, our State Refugee Office is under the California Department of Social Services. And we do have many refugee forums in different areas because California is a large state and then big arrival numbers, so that we do have a state refugee coordinators and then also county refugee coordinators. And they work closely with the refugee forums in 8 counties that have high numbers of refugee arrivals. I just shared that just 3 logos from different refugee forum, but we do have more refugee forums in the different area in the state of California. Let's go to the next slide. As other case studies and then other models, of course, this model have many opportunity, but also challenges. And the opportunity is definitely around the presence of county refugee coordinators at general meetings, or even the state refugee coordinators. They can join the meeting, and so that ECBO leaders, service providers have a regular opportunity to meet with them, possibly online, possibly in person. That is definitely a huge opportunity. And the next one is open and welcoming space for refugee service providers and the ECBOs. To be a part of the refugee forum doesn't need to be well-established organizations. Whichever organization working for the community of newcomers and refugee populations, they are welcome. And so that's definitely a great opportunity, especially for small ECBOs. And then newly established ECBOs. And the third one, around the collaboration and networking among service providers. The collaboration can happen maybe through the event planning for the World Refugee Day. I know San Diego Bay Area, many areas in California have a great World Refugee Day run by the refugee forums, and then have great partnership with the county or state refugee offices around that. And then also have a task force and committee to collaborate and then work with others, and access to the state county level data information. That's definitely a great opportunity. The challenge is about the region without active refugee forums. We do have 8 or maybe 9 refugee forums now, but still there are some areas that fall away from the refugee forum location, or the actual organizations running those forums meetings. And we definitely have some gaps around that. And each refugee forum operates differently. The San Diego Refugee Forum, for example, meeting monthly and then really active. And then all the refugee forum is running very differently, but to really know about that, you have to know people, you have to really go there. So that might be the challenges, especially for the new ECBO, to navigate that, even try to find that type of opportunity, try to find the refugee forum opportunity might be hard for ECBO without navigations or connection. So that was some opportunity and challenges from the case study 3. Now that I share the 3 case studies from 3 states, I'm going to pass back to Rob. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you get to sit back and become a panelist. So thank you for your expertise as a speaker. We're now going to move into our next and final section of this webinar, and you'll notice there's plenty of time for this, so we'll be able to hopefully answer a lot of questions that we've both prepared from registration questions, as well as questions that you'll submit in the Q&A. So don't forget to keep submitting those. I want to also emphasize that while we're talking about 3 models that Nao shared about today, there is no shortage of ways to partner between ECBOs and state refugee offices. We just hope that these can operate as useful blueprints for you all as you are forging your own partnerships as well. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in our other 2 Q&A panelists as well. So Nawid and Sedrick, y'all can come on camera, and we'll start with doing some Q&A for our folks. So especially now that we've heard Nao, you shared about sort of the format of the models. We'd love to hear more personally from each of you about, what it is that works so well about your model. You guys as leaders within the field who are implementing this model, what works really well, and what are the most important actions that participants in this webinar can take if they're interested in implementing something similar to you, but in their state? So I'd like to start with Nawid. And just as a reminder for participants, Nawid's model is where he has an ECBO office or coordinator within his state office, and so within the Idaho replacement designee. So Nawid, what works about your model, and what would you recommend to participants if they want to replicate that model?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob and Nao. I appreciate the invitation. So I want to kind of give a little bit of background about how the Afghan Cultural Center started and my involvement in it, and then I will go into answering your question. So I was lucky to have the support of the refugee state coordinator for the nonprofit grant that we applied. The reason we got it, we were awarded this grant is because of the support of the state coordinator and the parent organization, which is Janus. The way it worked is that when the Afghanistan previous government fell, basically, and there were a lot of incoming of Afghans to the United States and mainly to Idaho. So there was a big need to support the Afghan community. And when the self-help ethnic grant was announced for the Afghan community from the ORR office, Tara Wolfson, who's the director of Idaho Office for Refugee and she's also the state coordinator, she reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to help your community? And you can apply for this grant. And then we started the conversation and we identified the need. So the key component is identifying the need and clearly understanding the need, making sure you're not replicating what you're trying to solve, making sure that the same type of service or organization you're trying to create it already doesn't exist, because it's a waste of resources and inefficient. So create a plan and a proposal on how to resolve the need. Discuss it with stakeholders, meaning the receiving community, the other partners and stakeholders, resettlement agencies, and so on. Incorporate feedback from them to the plan, your proposal, and approach your SRO or RD, the State Refugee Office or the Replacement Designee Office to have a very open conversation, but go with a solid proposal and funding request. Know exactly what you're requesting for, and make sure you have answers to all their questions, and you're confident in what your plan is. So that was my approach, and we created internally a plan, and then we handed over that to the grant writer, which works for Janus, Idaho Office for Refugees, and based on that plan, the proposal was created and it was submitted, and thankfully, luckily, we were awarded. Now, there was a confidence in achieving this is because I was involved with evacuating folks from Afghanistan. So I already had a very strong relationship. I had a very strong relationship with the former governor of Idaho and the senators and so on. So there was that trust from the Idaho Office for Refugees, but I also worked at the Idaho Office for Refugees while I was going to school for engineering. So I was a database administrator. And once I finished my school, I went into doing engineering, but I always provided them services on contract basis when they needed anything related to database, data admin, reporting, and so on. So there was an established relationship with the Idaho Office for Refugees. Now, I can imagine if there was no relationship, getting through this hurdle of trust and knowing, taking risk on my proposal or on my plan would have been a little bit, risky. For them, there wasn't, the unknown part, uncertainty part involved, right? So, fortunately for me or for us, it was that was resolved. But then we also had the support of another organization, which throughout this evacuation process, that organization, which was the Idaho Defense Alliance, they raised money for evacuating folks. And then we had that funding available for us in supplement to the ethnic community self-help grant. So that component also put trust in the minds of the leadership of Janus and Idaho Office for Refugees that, okay, this is a sustainable proposal, this is a sustainable plan, it can work it can resolve the needs that the Afghan community is facing, or those Afghans who are newly arrived to the state of Idaho.
Absolutely. Actually, Nawid, I might actually ask you a question that came in from the Q&A. Just sorry to interrupt you, but participants are wondering, when was the ACCI established and when did you receive your first funding?
Yeah, so ACCI was established in 2022, and we received the award letter from ORR. I believe it, if I'm not mistaken, it was in September of 2022.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And just from what I'm hearing, it sounds like, just for highlighting for our folks who work in the state refugee office side or state refugee coordinators, the founding of the ACCI started from the state refugee office level, who had trust in people like you and folks on the ground who were doing the work, right? So just by leveraging funds through the Ethnic Community Self-Help Grant offered by ORR, and by partnering with the other organizations in the area, that's how you were able to start the work of the ACCI, right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. And I think that the key is, for those who are thinking about it and those who are having a hard time connecting with stakeholders and mainly their state coordinators, be persistent, be consistent, have a plan, approach them, don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And it's possible.
I love it. And I really appreciate how you're framing, making really clear about, what the need is and how you are uniquely situated for handling that need, right? That's really great. So thanks, Nawid, for answering that first question. I'm going to turn it now to Sedrick. Sedrick, can you share about what makes the Marafiki Center so great as a model for partnering with state refugee offices and steps that participants can take to replicate it? And just as a reminder for participants, Sedrick's model relies on a consulting relationship with the State Refugee Office for promoting ECBO engagement and mobilization across the state. Take it away, Sedrick. What works for you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob and Nawid. That was great, and you mentioned really some good stuff, and I think that's very important. And speaking to you here, I think I wear two hats, and one is the Marafiki board member, board director, but also able to work with Kentucky Office for Refugee as a consultant and ECBOs, which has been doing a lot of amazing work, in which we can talk in details later. But as far as your question is concerned, yeah, I think one of the thing that is there, and I think my colleague Nawid has mentioned it, networking and reaching out, because one of the things that helped Marafiki Center, for instance, was the consistency, but also reaching out to, we work with refugees, we support refugees, we do so much, but where is the people that are supposed to support us so that we can do the work, right? And that's reaching out, that connection, that network, trying to reach out, and that's how we got to work with Kentucky Office for Refugees. Now, as a consulting, it's the same, because, and I will mention it in a very nice way, because when you do not reach out, when you do know who to go to, sometimes it can be really hard when it comes to ECBOs to get to where they want to do. So basically, like in a nutshell, I would just say, when you reach out, when you consulting people, when you knock doors, and that's how those opportunities started coming. But again, before that, it does not come just for nothing. It's just because there is a work that has been going on. There is a community that has been in need and needs support. Therefore, who is there to help? And because there is a plan, there is a need, there is challenge. In order to resolve them, there are little issues here and there, such as funds, resources that need to be there. Therefore, you need to reach out to people. And that's how that goes around that whole system.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it sounds like your connection and your work already with Marafiki Center is sort of what flagged to KOR, like, hey, we should reach out to folks like Sedrick, who we can consult with for better informing our own plans for mobilization. Does that sound like an accurate representation of?
Exactly, because I've spent more than 15 years in a community-based organization, refugee organizations, not only in the US and overseas. And that has led the Kentucky Office for Refugees to trust somebody from the community to be able to do the job. And I would say that a lot of this consulting work has always been done with, like, a different type of people, not like me. But, to be able to trust me to do the whole statewide consultation, designing a framework and engagement and assessment and conducting all these things that will inform how the state will support refugees was big. Yes, was just based on that community involvement and community work.
Yeah, and just being able to show everyone your expertise and do it in a way that's like very visible and impactful. So yeah, very, very much want to say highlighting that method of saying like, hey, let's demonstrate our expertise. And then maybe the state refugee office will notice us that way or see us as sort of an instrumental partner in this. So great, really appreciate your response to that, Sedrick. Last but not least, let's turn it to Nao. And as a reminder for participants, Nao's model that she operates within is within the state of California, just a number of forums that operate as ECBO coalitions that partner directly with state refugee offices. So now, what works about your model really well? What are you really proud of? And how would you recommend participants engage in this kind of model?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. And thank you, Nawid and Sedrick. I'm just so happy to hearing what you say. You mentioned about networking, about trust, partnership, trust relationship between ECBO and state refugee offices, and like reaching out, being consistent, like Nawid said. I think that was amazing. And then I think that's a key for the strong partnership. It's mutual relationship. It's the partnership, which is very important for the state refugee office and then also the ECBO and then the community that we serve. And for me, like my organization's current organization of San Diego started in 2009. And it took 2 years until we actually got the first funding. So beginning part, we were pretty much operating without any funding. But first thing we did was to go to the refugee forum and let people know that we are new, but we started to do this work and we want to work with you all. And so I think that was one thing that we did right. And then I still recommend people if you want to start the new ECBO, if you want to start the ethnic community-based organization, starting working with the state refugee office, find a place to meet with the person and then just to go. And then as a ECBO leaders, I know that I also felt very intimidated actually at the beginning. That sounds like a state refugee coordinator, county refugee coordinator sounds huge. And then I'm volunteering in the community, no funding, no office, no staff. But we know that we are doing the great work for the community, and then our community need these organizations. And then so I just trust my guts and then did that. But I think we should all do that. The work of the ECBOs have to be recognized more. And we all need this for our communities. And then, yeah, so I think, and then the duplication, I think I'm very fortunate that I'm in the state of California. And then state of California, when I started this work, already have a refugee forum. And then I would just need to find that and then just go there. And then that's it. But maybe like some states without this type of coalition or the refugee forum, I will maybe still trust my guts and then just email or call or knock on the door of the refugee coordinator or the state refugee office people. Let them know that I want to start meeting with you. I want to start coalition. I can bring people together, and then let's start something. So maybe, yeah, something like that. But yeah, thank you, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hear that's really great about the way that you were able to connect with your state office is that you found a place where the state refugee office and state refugee coordinator already had a presence, right? And so you were able to meet them where they are. And I know for many of us, it can feel like when you send an email out to someone in a big government office, you don't always know if it's going to be received or if it'll be responded to. But it's really nice to know that state refugee coordinators, like you said, they're just people like us, they're not just like a big scary government, that they're folks that want to partner with us, that would be really excited to hear about the ideas that we have. The work that's on the ground, on the community, is really essential for the state refugee coordinator in office to know of as well, right? Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much for responding to that now. And great, so let's move on to sort of our next kind of question around this. As you can imagine, a lot of our participants prior to joining submitted questions around funding from state refugee offices and how to apply for those funds and those sorts of things. So I want to ask briefly from you guys just some like quick tips and strategies and things that you all kept in mind if you applied for funding from your state refugee office, or perhaps even considering or are funds that made you more on the radar for state refugee offices. Does anyone want to tackle that question first? Maybe now. Could I ask you? We'll go maybe some in some reverse order.
Yeah, thank you. And then I think Nawid also share about that OR Ethnic Community Self-Help Grant. And that was also the first grant that we applied in 2011. And that was the first ever grant that we are able to get it after we started organization in 2009. So we are very fortunate that we were able to apply for the funding. And that is a very unique funding that's available for small ECBO, just the newly established ECBOs to apply for the federal funding, and then can use for the capacity building of the organizations and then the leaders of the community. And then it's still very active programs. And but now to apply for the funding, I believe that it's required to have support letter from the state refugee offices. So I think, and then at the beginning when I heard about that, I thought, ooh, you know, I'm very, you know, fortunate that I do have a great relationship with our coordinators. But how about some ECBOs, like they are very new in maybe some states that don't know how to connect with the state refugee coordinator? How they gonna do that? And then I thought that is a burden. It's a hard for some ECBOs to have that type of requirement just to apply. But now at the same time, I started to feel like that's maybe the, you know, something that could push you to do it. And then at the end, anyway, we have to start working with the state refugee coordinators and then the state refugee offices to support our community who are coming to our community. And then without this opportunity, without that requirement, maybe some of us don't push ourselves to contact the state refugee office. So I thought that is an important way to work with the state refugee office to apply for the funding from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And then also, as you mentioned, like when you're talking about the flow of the different fundings available, and then also like you're mentioning about like the state funding information is kind of hard to find compared to federal grant. It's like a, you know, grant.gov. You just go there. It's very obvious. RP is there. And then that's a place that you can find all the federal funding versus state funding. It depends on the states. And then like there's no place that I can just search the state funding. That's more about like a relationship. I have to find where is the relation, like that type of opportunity is available. So for my case, like in the California, because of Sunday of Refugee Forum and then also the relationship with the state refugee office, that I've been like hearing a lot of announcement from our state refugee coordinator or the county refugee coordinators around that new funding opportunity that is really applicable for the ECBOs like us. And so I think that's another way like to navigate us through this very difficult state funding process. It's good to have great relationship with the state refugee coordinators or the county refugee coordinator. I stop here. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we also have Nawid, who's a grantee of the Ethnic Community Self-Help Grant. However, I kind of want to shift the question a little bit, mostly for the sake of time. I wish I could talk to you guys for forever. But I want to direct sort of our next question more specifically to Nawid, now that we've gotten some good tips. So next question is around sort of like when applying for grants or partnering with state refugee offices. Like I had mentioned earlier in our session, the administrative challenges exist. We are often really working tirelessly in the field on the ground, and ECBOs more so than any other organization, really doing incredible work, especially in sort of often resource low environments. So for you, Nawid, I see you in a really cool position in that you work often like within the replacement designee in your state. So I wanted to ask you about sort of that administrative burden. So what are things that maybe ECBOs can do to sort of leverage their bandwidth to be able to handle the administrative burden? But then also, what are things that state refugee offices are able to do to perhaps make things more accessible administratively for organizations like ECBOs?
Yeah, so I'll from a perspective of state refugee office, right? What they are seeking? They are seeking success in their program. They want to make sure that the outcomes and objectives are achieved. So they want you to succeed. As an ECBO, the state coordinator, the Idaho Office for Refugees, they want my program, or Janice as a whole, they want my program to succeed. And then it's a matter of me reaching out to them when I have a need, when I need a resource. And currently, I'm working on a bigger long-term strategic plan and trying to apply for funds, actually private funds, because the current funding from the ORR ends in next year. And then I'm looking into, okay, I need to have a strategic plan. I need to be able to use that strategic plan to apply for funds and make sure for those funding opportunities, I meet their requirements and the plan is unique. So who do I reach? I reached with all the stakeholders, which I think are key. They can play a key role into the success of Afghan Cultural Center and the Idaho Office of Refugees and Janice. So it's up to the leader. It's on the leadership of the ECBOs that they are proactively seeking avenues where they can maximize their objective, like how to achieve their objective. So the key is to make sure you know what resources are there, and then you're going after it. And obviously, you will always not succeed, but majority of the time, people are willing to help you to achieve your goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
go ahead,
I can add just quickly on that, I think I would say Kentucky is doing an amazing job on that. And at that question, I think it's really amazing. And that's one of the biggest things I've seen on my work when it comes to ECBOs around and how to access those grants when there's a lot of admin related issue, you know. And one thing that Kentucky Office for Refugee, I can really strongly commend to them, and I appreciate what they have done, is they work close with the ECBO and to provide all necessary support. Like part of the work, even when Marafiki sends apply for the job, you know, if there is question and back, they can meet them, they can come to you, they can go through things, or sometimes you wrongly write the budget, or maybe you forgot some benefit from your staff, they can come back and say like, no, you can add this and this and that. It's not like, you know, it's not like they're putting you into a situation whereby, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And the good thing is, like in the whole August, we spent time with ECBOs in Kentucky to train them things like grant writing one-on-one, reporting one-on-one, and compliances. Not only that, but also we went ahead and meeting the ECBOs where they are, and with the application in place, and tell them literally how they can fill out the application. But also, beyond that, they connect the grant coordinators at state level to ECBOs that will apply for specific grants available. So they make sure those ECBO or leader can be able to support them and can be able to apply for grants. So I think Kentucky personally is doing a lot of work in terms of assisting. But I will say this, for ECBOs, it's now up to you. As much as the state can put effort, you also have to put more effort to show that you can make it happen. And the call for application, for instance, for new grant is coming soon in December. And I'm hoping a lot of ECBOs in Kentucky will be able to get funds for the organization. So the state of Kentucky is really doing really one-on-one calls in person, just to making sure the application, you get it, you can apply. Even if you're not a grant writer, I feel like all the work that they have done, they've made sure at least you know what to write and how to write it and what to make. And also they have created these ECBOs interconnected support. Let's say Marafiki Center, I've got the job, I've got the grants before. They can assist in that organization to learn tips from them on what they did so that they can have the grants. So that's what has been happening.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And both of the things that y'all have said sort of show, like Nawid, you were saying, these are things that state refugee offices want. They want to connect with folks on the ground, right? And so what are things that state refugee offices can do? And that's maybe through offering trainings or availability for coaching and support like that. You know, not in line with, you know, perhaps stepping over some sort of impartial lines of assisting folks with actually writing the grants, but at least making sure that protocols, processes, and procedures are clear and accessible for folks who are applying. No, did you have something to add? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing. And I'm not sure if this is unique to Idaho, but I'm assuming every state might have something similar. So there's it's called the Idaho Nonprofit Center. And Their goal and their mission is to help nonprofit organizations with all the items we talked, like, okay, how to apply for grants, training, all the logistics that goes into managing a grant and reporting and so on. So as I said previously, that there are resources available out there. It's a matter of navigating it, and it's a matter of connecting with those resources to go after whether you're applying for a grant or so on. So proactively looking for an answer is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And this actually, this sort of piece about finding local organizations or collective, so to speak, does bring me to my next and final question that I've prepared, and then we can turn to some of the submitted Q&A. A lot of the things that we've talked about have had to do with networking, both with your state refugee office or your placement designee, and also with other ECBOs. So, but often it can be really challenging to know who else is in your field, in your community, doing the same work as you. So I wanted to turn this question to any or all three of you guys. What are some ways that you guys network and build community with other ECBOs? Maybe actually, I might want to start with Nao, since your whole model relies on coalition building. Oh, sorry, Sedrick. Let's have Nao go first, and then I'll come to you. Okay?
No.
Thank you, Sedrick. Yes, that is a great question. And then I wanted to share about the community of practice that Switchboard is doing.
Yeah.
And I know the Switchboard has many different community of practice. That's the space for people to connect and then talk about best practices, success, and yeah. And then one of that is this community of practice for ECBO leaders. And then my organization is supporting that work with the Switchboard, and then have amazing leaders like Sedrick, Nawid, and then others. ECBO leaders are part of our community practice. We are meeting monthly the last Tuesday of the month, and the next meeting is next Tuesday, September 24. Always meeting on the Zoom. And then the information is on the Switchboard website. I think I can also put on to the chat later. But yeah, that's a great way that you can meet with people from all over the states, so that definitely have a different experience, different backgrounds, but give a lot of great wisdom, that everybody coming to the space have great wisdom and great experience. And then that's something that I'm thinking I'm struggling, somebody have the answer, and then vice versa. We can kind of build a community, and then we can sustain this work together. That's amazing space. And then also like applying for the funding, like a coalition type of applying, like applying together with the ECBOs. That's going to be really helping for the small, newly established ECBO, never have experience applying for the government funding, to apply and I get awarded as a subgrantee. That's another way to create the community in the local level. So I just wanted to share that quickly. Thank you, Rob.
Absolutely. And I dropped in the chat a blog post from Switchboard that highlights some of what comes up in communities of practice, particularly the ECBO leader one. And if you want to register for that, there's a link at the bottom of it. Is that one still live? If not now, hopefully you can find a good link for us. But Sedrick, what were you going to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think that's one of the weakness, the challenge. I'm not gonna say weakness. That's one of the biggest challenge when it comes to ECBO leaders, in terms of connecting, participate, network, collaborate, and involve at a higher level. Not only the community. The community involvement is strong, and they know what they do. They know they need. They know, but that's not enough. In order to get resources, and I believe now, and my colleague Nawid here will agree with me, you need to go beyond your community. You need to go beyond where you are hiding. And that's very important. You know, you have to make sure you know the people around you can go to. When there is a meeting in a city, you have to be there. When there is a community of practice, either at the local level, at the national level, like the one of Switchboard, you have to go there. That's why things are discussed. And that's why you meet people. Because, you know, when it comes to resources, most especially, because I do believe that's the most needs of a lot of these ECBOs, you need to know somebody. And I'll tell you what, if Refugee Center was able to get a grant, was also because of recommendation of some people. We reach out to now, like we know people at ORR, or we can reach out to this one. You know somebody here, you need this one. Oh, I know this one knows somebody. Oh, now we'll say, I know Sedrick, I know Elisha, they're great people. Oh, then, you know, if Rob, you're the one giving the grant, you'll be like, then I trust them, that's fine. we need to connect, we need to participate, we need to involve, we need to network, and we need to get involved. If you do that as a leader, you will get the resources you need. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Nawid, what about you? What works for you for networking and connecting with other ECBOs in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a monthly meeting in Boise, which is the Neighbors, called the Neighbors United. It's an organization. And in that, you have stakeholders from the city, from the state, from the Idaho Office for Refugees, from other nonprofit organizations. And they meet once a month and they discuss different topics, and they try to kind of coordinate resources. When there's a resource and there's a need, they try to navigate through that. And I think I definitely agree with what Sedrick said, is that as an ECBO leader, it's your I would say responsibility to make sure you do go to all the major events that's happening in the city, in your community, because that's the key. That's where you can go meet other individuals, and you can broaden your network, and that can lead to funding opportunities, that can lead to recommendations, that can lead to resources on even volunteers, because when you need volunteers, when you need people to help on your day-to-day or your events, that's where you can make those connections.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys all so much. That's the end of our prepared questions. And fortunately, we've actually addressed the questions that have come in through the Q&A box. So I want to shout out to our panelists, not only answering live, but those who have gone in and typed out responses. If you have questions, as a participant, check out our answered questions in the Q&A, as it may already have been asked and answered. So just want to say thank you so much to our panelists here. You guys have been such a wonderful source of knowledge and experience. So really grateful for y'all. We're going to close out today's webinar. And if we can get the slides back on very briefly, one thing we did talk about is it's really important to connect with your SRO, and we want to make really clear how to do that. And so I've just dropped in the link, in the chat, a link to ORR's website that has a list of key state contacts, and those are the state refugee coordinators and state refugee health coordinators in each state across the United States. It also has contact information for them. Each name listed there has an email that's hyperlinked, so click on the name and it'll take you to craft an email to them directly, wherein you could request an orientation meeting, learn about their proposal processes. Again, share about the thing that you do that a state refugee office would really benefit from. So make sure that you're specifying what it is that you are uniquely positioned to address in your community, and why that's in the best interest of the state refugee office and the refugee resettlement program at large. So just want to make sure you have access to that. And as we're closing, we just want to ask you all, what best practice, maybe shared by our ECBO experts here or shared in the earlier slides, are you most excited to apply in your work? So last slide of our session, if you want to scan that QR code and share some ideas that you're walking away with from today's session. Got some folks typing already. Email our SRC today for the first time. That is encouraging. I really love to see that. Just easy commitment, just to say hi, just to make that connection. And you might have to send it for the second and third time too, but know that the state refugee coordinator is hoping to work with you on the other end of that. All right, working with the SRC, love to see that as well. Other practices we're looking at. Let's see. I also want to acknowledge that while these answers are coming in, we are at time for our webinar. So if you do need to drop off, that's all right. We'll stay on just to share a couple last closing things, and would love to keep seeing these. Contacting and collaborating with your state refugee coordinator, strengthening current partnerships and contacts in the community to be able to access the needed funds. Great, leveraging the support you already have. That's always a good practice. So. All right, and while we're waiting for some of those last best practices, I've also dropped in the chat a link to our survey. Just want to say, yeah, making more connections, trusting your gut, so on and so forth. Really, really great responses. And if we can just go to the next slide. Sorry for cutting anyone off, still typing. Hopefully now you were able to explain how SROs and ECBOs partner, identify some of those great models, and apply some of these best practices that we chatted about today. We will be sending out recommended resources to you all, so stay tuned for those in a follow-up email. These are just a few to highlight from our resource library. And of course, the ECBO Community of Leaders Community of Practice is a great thing to join as well. And last but not least, help us help you. We really appreciate your feedback on our Switchboard webinar. So if you're still with us and are able to take a few moments to scan this QR code and fill out the feedback survey about today's webinar, we'd be really grateful. Just a couple questions, takes less than a minute to complete. And this will inform our future training and technical assistance opportunities and our webinars like this one in the future. And of course, please stay connected with us. Check us out online at switchboardta.org. There you can access our really extensive resource library. You can sign up for our newsletter if you scroll way down to the bottom of that website. And you can also follow us on social media just to stay up to date. These are some of the best ways to stay aware of the opportunities we're sharing these days. So yeah, stay connected, and we hope that you'll keep trusting us as your one-stop resource hub for newcomer service providers. Thanks for attending today's webinar, and we hope you have a great day.